Hello, yes, that's right. It's Joe here for Joyrider TV, live from the Wildwind Workshop, Vasiliki, Greece. Thanks to everybody who has already tuned in. This is, of course, going to be a live Q&A session where I'm going to be answering any sailing related questions or any other questions, in fact, that you've got. If you've got any questions and you're watching live, brilliant. If you happen to be watching this later on, which I know the majority of viewers will be doing, and you have got any burning sailing questions, then just put them in the comments and I'll either answer it in next week's Q&A session as a preloaded question, or if it's just a quick one, I could even answer it in the comments section of the video. So there you go.
Stefania Papademia now.
Can't take that call just now. I'm in the Q&A. Yeah, so hello to everybody who's on board. We've got Ollie Smith, who's actually going to be here, I think, in a week or so. He's currently in Canada. Looking forward to having you out here, Ollie. We've also got
Stefania Papademia now.
I just can't take that. Yeah, so we've also got Max in Rosenheim, just back in from Graveling, wishing everyone a windy weekend. Thanks very much for that, Max. Got Lee in Macon, Georgia, USA. Good morning, Joyriders. And good afternoon, Joyriders also. And to anybody watching in Australia, and good night to everybody. Got hello, Hanny. Hanny's a regular visitor to us in Vasiliki. Good afternoon from a cold and windy Amsterdam. Faizan, afternoon. Thanks for tuning in. Russell's on board. Hello, Russell. Robin's on board in Florida. Hello. We got Gaz there, Leon C. Essex. Hi, Gaz. Nice to have you with us. Ollie Smith says flights book, can't count the days enough. I get the impression he's looking forward to it. Got Seabob 64, who Seabob 64 was actually the specialist sailor featured in the last What Went Wrong video, which was very nice indeed. Thanks again for sending in that footage. He says, my idea was, like in windsurf, to untight the leech of the sail to allow the sail to twist and handle the gust in an easier way. Does it work? Or shall I release the traveller and sheet in? Yeah, yeah, so what he's talking about is having a really loose leech on the sail to allow it to twist and handle the gusts a lot easier, rather than to let the traveller out and sail with the main sheet in more. So what we're talking about here, sorry, I've just been a bit thrown by the phone constantly ringing. Yeah, so what we're talking about here is, how is it best to handle the power on a gusty day if you are getting gusts which are really trying to buck you off your boat? Is it better to have a looser main sheet and more traveller, or a looser traveller and more main sheet? Yeah, tricky one. But if you go for the first option, looser main sheet, more traveller, this will of course work, because when you get a gust, then there's not going to be much tension in the leech to pull you over. But when you've got a looser main sheet, if you do need to change the amount of main sheet you've got on, you are going to have to work with a lot more sheet. So if you need more power, you're going to have to sheet in a load of sheet. And then if you need less power, you're going to have to sheet out a lot more. Whereas if you're sailing with the traveller out more, you can sail with the main sheet generally tighter, and that will mean that you've got a lot more control over the shape of the sail. And yes, you are going to have to be a little bit quicker with your main sheet action, but you're not going to have to use nearly as much main sheet there to control the power. So for efficiency, speed, and the ease of sailing the boat, it's better when it's windier to put the traveller out more and to put the traveller out more, tighter main sheet generally, and then just play the main sheet in the gusts there. It's going to be better all round. You're going to be so much more in control, whereas the other way around, it's going to be like you're riding the Bronco and just trying to hang on, and while the thing's trying to buck you off, you're just holding on, going woohoo, yeehaw, and really good fun as well, of course. All right, we've got Mr. Tony KP. Nice to have you on board there, Mr. Tony KP. Hope you're well. Russell says, have you sailed the Hobie Wildcat? Thoughts on that boat versus newer style F-18s? How do they compare / differ? Yes, we did have a Wildcat here for one season, and I would say it's my only experience in this area is the Wildcat and the C2 from Goodall Design. The C2 was designed probably about 10 years after the Wildcat, but the hull shape is very similar indeed. And in fact, the whole setup is very similar from the C2, which let's call that an up-to-date, even though it's not up-to-date anymore because it has been replaced, but that's an up-to-date F-18, whereas the Wildcat is a bit older, but they are very, very similar indeed. Very similar to sail. Everything about them is very similar, but unfortunately, the trouble with the Wildcat is the dagger boards. The dagger boards on the Wildcat have got a history. Now, I don't know if this is all Wildcat dagger boards or if it was just the earlier versions, but they are quite prone to snapping. I don't know why this is. There's obviously too much load for how strong they are, because they are, if the C2 dagger boards are like this, the Wildcat dagger boards are more like this and a bit longer, and that perhaps does make them a bit less strong, but very similar. Both very nice boats to sail. Of course, I never sailed a Wildcat with a deck sweeper mainsail, so that would be very interesting to try that, but I would say very similar indeed. That's what I think.
Stefania Papademia now.
Can't take that right now. Okay, we've got James on board from Sarasota, Florida, USA. Great to have you on board there, James. And Matthew is there in Baltimore, currently outside stripping old faded decals off my new to me 1984 Hobie 16. Great stuff. That is can be quite a painful job if they're not particularly giving, or can be quite a satisfying job if you do get a load of sticker off in one go. What I found to be very useful when taking off old stickers is to borrow the wife's hairdryer without letting her know or asking, and then heating up the sticker and then getting in there with a scrapey tool, or if it gets really aggressive getting the old stickers off, what you can actually use, you've got to be very careful, of course, is a Stanley knife blade, and that will really get underneath the sticker and do a good job. But you do have to, of course, be very careful with that. All right, we've got Chris on board, coming from the, what's it called? The One Star, is it called the One Star State? from Texas. Chris is, of course, one of the key organisers of this year's comeback tour of the Prindle Catamaran competition. Yes, start of June this year in Texas will be the 50th anniversary of Prindle Catamarans, and it will be the first North American championship to be held for, I believe, 20 years. So if you're a Prindle sailor or any sailor and you're in the area, I should get down there to that Prindle 50th anniversary event, because it's going to be a great event and we're just wanting to get as many people involved there as possible. Hello, Chris. We've also got Rich on board. Hello, Rich. Rich is, of course, the president of the International Hobie Cat Class Association. Great to have you on board there, Rich. We've got Mark and Janet from Ohio, heading to Florida on vacation for 2 weeks. Very nice too. Chris says, pull the downhaul till it breaks. It'll flatten and twist the sail. Then more traveller, keep the sheet on. There we go. Chris is a very experienced catamaran sailor, and he's got the full quiver of what we need to know here. We've got Matt on board. Morning. All right. James says, nice. James from Florida, USA says, I've got a Prindle 19 a while ago. Got too busy with work, but finally taking her out this weekend. Nice. Fantastic. All right, Matthew, with the D taking the stickers off, both frustrating and satisfying for sure. I actually bought a stripper wheel, which is basically a giant drill-powered circular pencil eraser. Sounds good. It's actually working great on the old stripes. Nice. And James is asking Chris, are there any events out in Florida for Prindle sailors? I'm sure you'll hear from Chris fairly shortly there. All right, so yes, as usual, I have got some preloaded questions. So I thought I'd just steam in with the first one, if I may. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. And yeah, this was a sort of general question that I had last week. Apologies, I can't remember who it was from specifically, but it is about the topic of calibration stickers. And is it actually important, the distance that you have between the marks on your calibration stickers? And the short answer is it's not so important, to be honest, because, all right, let's draw a picture. We haven't had one yet. So if this is our mast, what we need on the calibration is we'll put the sail up when we've pulled on a minimum amount of downhaul. So this is using the calibration sticker to gauge how much downhaul to put on, which I think for most people, this would be the primary use of a calibration sticker. So there's the bottom of our sail going up there. So how do we know if we have pulled on enough downhaul for the minimum setting? So when we want the most power out of the sail, we put on the downhaul the minimum amount, and the minimum amount will be just to pull the creases out of the sail. And once we've got the majority of the creases out of the sail, that is the minimum amount. So we're just pulling it down till the creases are out. If then, when you bring the main sheet in a little bit, if there's more creases going into the sail, because of course the main sheet is going to pull the sail down as well, which might crease the sail up again at the front edge at the luff. If that's the case, then probably you need a little bit more downhaul for your minimum. Once you've decided where your minimum is, that is where your number one should go on the calibration. So that is where your number one should go. Now, the reason why the numbers don't really matter so much is because all sails are going to be slightly different. So you can't say definitely, all right, when you start double trapezing, pull it to number two, guaranteed, because your sail might be a bit more stretched, might be less stretched, which means the downhaul is going to have a more immediate effect. Whereas a more stretched sail, you're going to have to pull it harder on the downhaul, further down anyway, to get the same effect as pulling it less with a newer sail, which hasn't stretched as much. So that's what you need to know, is where is number one, and then which is the minimum. And then what you definitely need is that the calibration that you're putting on your mast is long enough, like deep enough, so that you don't run out of numbers before you've finished pulling the downhaul on. So what I would do is have your number one at minimum, and then when you go out sailing, just keep a mental note of how much downhaul you're putting on for different situations. So the first one would be light winds, definitely not lifting the hull, definitely no chance of getting out on the trapeze. Then when you start trapezing, you probably want to bring on a bit more. So then you'd pull it down maybe to number two. But of course, depends on the sail. And then if you're double trapezing all of the time, then you probably want it on number three. And then once you've got to the amount of wind where you're having to ease main sheet in the gusts, that's when you want to be looking, especially on something more simple like a Hobie 16, you want to be pulling the downhaul on pretty much full if you're having to ease main sheet in the gusts, so that you're not sheeting out the main for the gusts. Instead, it's the downhaul which is doing the work by opening up the leech, flattening the sail, bringing the center of effort lower down, further forwards, which is going to transfer that extra power into more boat speed rather than into flying the hull more. So that is what your calibration should do. On these Joyrider TV calibration stickers, I've got a ruler. In between the numbers here is 5.5 centimeters. So just so that you know, the full range on here, I think this is interesting also, is 22 centimeters. So that is what we're looking at. Now, if you happen to be in the USA and you want to get hold of Joyrider TV calibration stickers, yes, they have been out of production for a while, but I'm currently having the early stages of a chat with someone who's going to look at whole flyer graphics. I'm sure some of you have experienced them. That's James there. So if you are looking for some calibration stickers and you are in the USA, then there is going to be those there. So there you go. All right, back to the live chat. All right, Michael. Hello, Michael. Michael asks, a do-it-yourself spinnaker install on a Hobie 16. Yes, this is something that you could do. And yes, it would be quite a fun project. But if you're looking to do a do-it-yourself spinnaker install rather than just buying the kit from Hobie Cat. Now, the kit from Hobie Cat is reassuringly expensive. I can't remember exactly how much it costs, but there is a reasonable amount of expense there. So what we're going to need, I think, first, in order of size, is first you're going to need a spinnaker. Now, most of the big sail makers should be able to get what would you call it, like the dimensions of a Hobie 16 spinnaker from one of their a big sail maker would have a cutting machine with software, and from that software they should be able to get the dimensions of the spinnaker if you're looking to get a new one made. But it would be worth comparing that to the price of a new one from Hobie Cat, because it's not something they're going to be selling a lot of. So there might be Hobie Cat dealers near to you who have got Hobie 16 spinnakers that have just been gathering dust on a shelf for many years, and they'd be happy to basically sell them for a very good price. So that would be a good start. After that, the next most significant thing you're going to need is the actual pole. Now, you don't have to buy your spinnaker pole from the manufacturer. You can just get a length of aluminium tube. What you need is to know, firstly, of course, how long it needs to be. You need to know the outside wall diameter, the outside diameter and the inside or the wall thickness of that tube. And then you could just go to anyone who sells aluminium tube, and that is going to be significantly cheaper. That's what we do here at Wildwind. We for our spinnaker poles, our tiller connecting bars, and our booms for the boats with a round boom section, and our tiller extensions, we just buy the lengths of aluminium, and it is way cheaper. I think for a spinnaker pole, the length of aluminium would probably cost something like, I would be surprised if it was more than about 60 euros. Whereas if you were to buy one from the manufacturer, you'd be looking at, I have no idea, but I'm sure it would be in excess of 250. Granted, you are going to have to drill some holes in that bad boy and put some fittings on. But yes, it is possible to install your own spinnaker kit. Then after that, you're going to need the chute. Now, 2 shakes. We are, of course, in the workshop, so I've got things that I could get hold of. Right, 2 shakes. I'm coming back. All right, so what you're going to need is one of these. This is the opening of the spinnaker chute. This is the Hobie one, and this might be something that you would need to get from Hobie, although there's going to be other alternatives out there, but I don't know how much they'll cost, how available they are. But this will basically screw or rivet onto the bowsprit, and then onto here. If you're buying the Hobie one, then you should probably get the Hobie soft part of the chute as well. You're not going to believe it. I'm going to get one of those as well. We've got it all here. Yeah, so this one ready to go onto a Hobie Tiger, but it's the same thing. But what's important is the shape of the bolt rope on the bag that goes into the chute. So if you're getting a Hobie chute opening, you will need to get the Hobie soft part of the spinnaker chute as well. And then for everything else, you're not going to believe it, but I have made a video on this about retrofitting a spinnaker, and I've actually gone through all of the blocks, all of the ropes, everything that you need. If anybody fancies it, who wants to have a look, you could find that video. Just put a link in the live chat. Otherwise, I'll put a link in the comments afterwards, after I've finished today. So there you go. It is, but having the spinnaker on the boat really does add a lot of sizzle on your downwind legs, so it's well worth having a look. All right, we've got Kesha Media on board. Hi all, and hello to you. Thanks for tuning in. All right, so Kesha Media says it also matters the temperature outside and if the sun is shining on your sail and the lines. I think would that be referring to the amount of downhaul, possibly? I think that's all we've talked about. Yeah. Yeah, because back to the downhaul and how hard you pull it, the temperature could have an effect, but also what's going to have an effect is how stiff is your mast. I think, I dare say that as an aluminium mast gets older, it's going to get softer, so it will bend more easily, which means pull it with the same amount of effort pulling the downhaul in, you'll actually not have as much effect on the sail with a less stiff mast. All right, Chris says the Hobie calibration stickers at 12 inches are fine for most applications. There we go. All right, we got Willis on board. Thanks for tuning in, Willis. Good to have you here. He says likes people, thumbs, it's important. Yeah, if you fancy hitting the like button at any point, then that is nice. Basically, you do hear from time to time, please hit the like button. What this does is basically makes it so that YouTube will put this video in front of more people, which means this fine information is going to be getting digested by more sailors, which is what I'm looking for. All right, we've got 10 toes down. Hello, good to have you on board. Matt says, are you going to make the flags and Joyrider stickers again? Yeah, I have actually got some flags in stock. I just haven't been pushing them particularly hard because when I got a load made before, they didn't really, I didn't sell very many, and they are quite expensive to get produced. But if you are after flag or stickers, send me an email and I'll have a look, see what I've got in stock. Depends a little bit where you are as well. If you're in Europe, that's a lot easier for me because I've actually got stuff here. But if you're in the States or Australia, South Africa, or in Chile, then it's going to be more tricky to get stuff to you. All right. Oh yeah, Chris says this is good actually for the for your spinnaker setup. Using a windsurfing mast as the bowsprit does work quite nicely. Yeah, when I snapped my first Hobie Tiger spinnaker pole, I did actually replace it for a windsurfing mast. You do need to reinforce the bits of the mast where you're going to be putting fittings, but it worked really well. That was good, yeah. All right, Faizan says, I'm in the market for a catamaran. Where to look? And I don't know what boat models I should go for. Could you help? I'm in the UK. All right, it really does depend a bit for what type of boat to buy. Depends on, I'm guessing that if you don't know what model of boat to go for, then you're probably at the early stages of the sport, which means you should go for something definitely not a boat that has dagger boards. So let's draw this picture again. We've had this one before. There's three basic hull types. There is, or there are, sorry. Hull type number one, this is the asymmetric hull. You'll find the asymmetric hull on boats like the Hobie 16, Hobie 14, Prindle 15 and 16. Those would be the most popular boats using an asymmetric hull. The asymmetric hull is basically on the boats which were designed longer ago. So the boats which were designed in the 70s largely had the asymmetric hull. And the asymmetric hull boats are generally a little bit more difficult to sail than option 2, which is the skeg hull boats. Now, the skeg hull boats are definitely what you want to go for if you are in the early stages of getting into some catamaran sailing. The skeg hull, what this does is it makes it as easy as it possibly can be to sail the boat, but without having to worry about the centerboard or dagger board, which would be the third type of hull, which is smooth like that. And then you have a retractable centerboard or dagger board like this. So let's just do the side profiles. That would be something like that. Something like that. Something like that. Yeah, so the skeg hull to go for if you are new to the sport. Generally, this is generally speaking, of course. Then the next consideration is, this is if you've got the choice, and what would you want your boat to be built from? Two main choices. One is fiberglass. Fiberglass is definitely the traditional material for these sort of boats to be built from. It's very hard wearing, but it is possible to damage or chip fiberglass a lot easier than the other option, which would be plastic. There are more and more plastic boats available, and these plastic boats, which I would say the most widely used plastic boats, and if you're in the UK, a good option, because there are more about than most in the UK, would be a Dart 16. In fact, I think for your purposes, Faizan, if you're in the UK and you want a boat to get started on, the Dart 16 ticks a lot of the boxes. We could just pause there. So this would be, the asymmetric would be more like the Hobie 16. And then this would be more like the F18 or Hobie 18. Now, the problem with the daggerboard hull or centerboard is you do have to lift it up and down. If you've got shallow water, if you're coming in, what it's doing is it's giving you another job to do. And the daggerboard or centerboard on the boat can be quite fragile. So it's definitely better to have the skeg hull at the early stages. And because you're in the UK, the Dart 16, you should be able to find one fairly easily. In fact, when you're asking where to look, Facebook Marketplace, if you put a search on Facebook Marketplace for catamaran, that would probably get you started and they'd start popping up. Just in the last week, I've seen 2 Dart 16s on Facebook Marketplace in the UK. So that's a really good place to start. The other option, if it was available, if you're going to be sailing with other people, might be the Hobie Getaway. This is another plastic hulled boat with the skeg hulls. Very easy to sail, but there's not so many around in the UK, so probably not as applicable. And then there's various other boats that do the same job as the Dart 16. But if you check out the Dart 16 on a Google search, that should give you a good start. All right, I'm going to leave that one there and continue. Hope that helps. Hi, Stephen. Great to have you on board. Hey, and Stephen is booked to come and see us on the 5th of June. Great stuff. I look forward to seeing you out here. And we've got Not House Gang. Not House Gang is the sailor of a Dart 18, same hull shape, but the fiberglass hull. The Dart 18 is a great boat, but the skeg part on the hull is quite fragile. If you let that bad boy hit a rock, or if you put it down on some asphalt, then you might have to repair it afterwards. All right. And he says, what's with a screw of the hull mounting of the ricks is going around but not out. Okay, I'm a little bit unsure of what you're saying. If you're saying you've got a screw in your hull, and when you're unscrewing it with a screwdriver, if it's not actually coming out, then this means you have got a slight issue with probably either the screw itself or what it's going into. If it's metal into metal, perhaps it's become corroded and it's no longer biting. If it's a screw going into fiberglass, perhaps the whole the actual fiberglass has become just chewed up, and you need to take the screw out. To get the screw out, what I would do is either use some grips like this and actually grab the head of the screw with the grips, if you could get in with some grips, and kind of screw it and pull it up at the same time. Perhaps if you can't get in with some grips, while you're screwing with one screwdriver, take a small screwdriver, get it under the head of the screw and kind of pull it up with the second screwdriver, maybe something like that. And then either way, what you could do afterwards is, if it, make sure that it's dry once you've got your screw out, maybe wash it with some acetone so it really does dry, and then fill the hole with, I'm all about the epoxy paste at the moment. Fill the hole and then re-drill the hole, put your new screw in, and there we go. I think that's what we're talking about here. All right, Stephen, who's coming out to see us, has just treated himself to a new harness. Feels a bit snug, new. You definitely want it to feel snug, because once it's wet, you're out on the water, she's going to loosen up a bit. And I think when choosing a trapeze harness, the main thing is with the sizing is the height. You want to make sure you have got enough back strap, so that although you might have it cranked right, a lot of excess strap for the spreader bar, but having them too big, like if your spreader bar, which I happen to have one here, is too wide and you can't actually tighten it enough so that it snug against, this is a lot higher up obviously than where we'd have it. When you've got this tight, the most important parts of the harness to have tight are these straps that come off the spreader bar. When you pull it outwards, the spreader bar shouldn't be able to come away from your body. If no matter how hard you tighten your straps, the spreader bar is out here, it might mean your spreader bar is too wide, but you should be able to get a narrower bar. Because if it's pulling away from your body, it's going to make it much more difficult for you when you're trapezing. All right, there we go. And where are we now? All right. Not Ausgang, screw of the rigging mount on the hull. In my case, the chip. Yeah, I think I pretty much covered that just there. Stephen says to Faizan, the Hobie 16 is a very good choice. Yeah, don't rule out the Hobie 16 because it's a bit more difficult to sail. But I would say in the UK, are there many used Hobie 16s for sale? This is something I don't know. I'm sure there are some. The 16 is a more difficult boat to sail than the Dart 16, but it'll give you a lot of enjoyment over the years, that's for sure. If you are sailing a boat at the early stages of the sport and it is more powerful, like if you do end up with a Hobie 16, for example, then the only difference is going to be your technique needs to be better, which in the long run is really good, because it means if you've learnt to sail on a difficult boat or a more difficult boat, you're going to end up being a better sailor. But in the early stages, it just means you're not going to be able to go out in quite as much wind, because the Hobie 16 is very powerful, whereas the Dart 16 is designed more for people at the early stages of the sport or youths. Yeah, so there we go. All right, Willis says fine information is watering it down. You're more of an encyclopedia of the Hobie than Hobie themselves. That's nice to say, Willis. Thank you. You are okay. He's just saying nice things about me. If I manage to meet you, I will know. Coat. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Chris has just pointed out the Prindle 18 is asymmetrical as well. Of course it is. Okay, and there are other asymmetric hold boats out there also. All right. Well, we've been going for 40 minutes already, and it feels like we've only just begun. All right, Kesha says, yeah, I've starred early in the morning when it was cold out. By noon, had to tighten up at least twice. Okay, yeah, so this is back on the topic of the downhaul. So he's saying that it started in the morning when it was cold, and then as the air temperature increased, he had to keep tightening up the downhaul just from the temperature. So the numbers are a little bit off all the time. But yeah, so the main thing with the calibration is this is for your reference so that you know where you are. If it's your boat or a boat that you're sailing a lot, you should have a good idea once you've got your sticker on how much to pull in different situations. Like perhaps, or it's just handy to have. So if you're sailing with a crew, you could say to the crew, can you pull the downhaul rather than saying on a bit or a bit more, pull the downhaul to number 2.5. And then there's no ambiguity. Everybody knows where they are. All right. I'd like to say yo to Jeff from Gear Report. Jeff, of course, at Gear Report does a lot of reviews on a lot of outside gear. Let's say if you're into a bit of camping, Gear Report is going to tell you what tent and shovel you should take with you. Nice to see you, Jeff. We've got Hans on board as well. Guten Tag, Hans. Hans is actually coming out here to work at the end of the month. Very exciting times. Looking forward to your input on the beach here. All right, here we go. We've got a warning from Willis to used Hobie buyers. The second time I went out on a friend's boat, I shredded my legs on the edge, on the lip at the edge. So the first thing I did when I bought mine was sand that lip. This is quite a cautionary tale. Let's in fact, we can use one of these pictures just to illustrate what Willis is talking about. But on a lot of boats where the side of the hull meets the deck, there is what we call a gunnel, spelt gunwale, which comes down like this. So on both sides, it's like a little hat that the hull is wearing. And what Willis is saying is this side bit of the hull was very sharp. If the boats had a collision, there is a chance the gunnel is going to be damaged. So it is well worth checking your gunnels for any sharp bits. Obviously, don't just run your finger underneath it, because if it is sharp, you might cut your finger. But do check it out. You could have a mirror on a stick. If you don't want to bend down, just check it with a mirror on a stick. And then if it is split, sand it down, maybe put some filler in there to make it less lethal. Right. Matthew says, oh, Matthew with the new to him 1984 Hobie 16. It's got 2 main sheet block hangers on the boom. I replaced my original 1984 main sheet block with a low profile 6-to-1. Which block hanger should I hang it from? Yeah, this is now the reason that the boat had 2 block hangers is because originally it would use 2 blocks on the top of the main sheet. which means that now you've changed to a more modern 6-to-1 system. You've got 1 point. So if this is the boom, we've got 2 points like there, and that goes to here. The ideal thing to do, and this might sting a bit, but the ideal thing to do is measure the distance between the two hangers, find the middle point, and then take one of the hangers off and put it halfway in between where the two were. You could take the other one off as well, because if you put it forwards, it's going to do two things. One is you're not going to get the mechanical advantage when you're sheeting in, so it's going to be much harder to sheet in. But also, if you've got your main sheet on here, what that's going to do to your bottom block is it's going to put your cleats really low, which is going to make it very difficult to cleat the main sheet. Granted, you can change the angle of your cleat, but it's not ideal. The opposite happens if you put it on the back one. Your cleat is going to be very high, so it's going to be quite difficult to uncleat the main sheet, but you are going to get more leverage on the leech of the sail. But because it's further back, when you let the main sheet out, you're going to be letting off a lot more rope to have the same effect on the leech of the mainsail. That is why we need to change the position of the hanger. What you're going to need is a drill with a nice sharp drill bit, and you're going to need a rivet gun and some rivets, or a mate who's an engineer with all that sort of kit. That is what you're going to need to do. Perhaps if I can find, I might have a boom here which has got two hangers on. If I find one, I will actually do this in a short video so that we can see what it looks like, the whole process. All right, Willis had the same thing with his 1970 Hobie 16. All right, so Stephen says, no, there's not many Hobie 16s up for grabs in the UK. They're like hen's teeth. All right. Oh, we got James on board. Oh, James, it's been a long time. Great to have you back with us. And then we've got Vinicius, who says, what is the safest way to get to land with the sailboat in a lake? That's an interesting question. It's got quite a few answers, I should think. So what is the safest way to get to the land? So the safest thing to do is, before you even go out sailing, if you're on a lake, and the point that you're going out from is here, is you want to be going out when the wind is in a direction that's going to make it easier for you to get back in. And that would be, let's try another color, with the wind in any direction that has got a bit of onshore in it. So onshore, round here, maybe from the side, but we don't want to be going out if the wind is blowing us away from the land. This is in an ideal situation if we're really thinking about the safety. So if the wind is blowing away from the point that you want to get back to, this is going to be the most difficult to get back in. And if it's blowing towards where you want to get back to, that's going to be the easiest. And then what we would do with that in mind, let's say the wind is blowing kind of cross on. So here's where we're going to. Wind from here. What we would want to do is approach from this kind of direction, and then we're going to stop the boat by turning into the wind. So we're going to come down here, gradually easing the sails out as we approach the land. This is going to help to slow us down. And then when we get to water that's shallow enough to be able to stand and hold the boat, we're then going to turn the boat up into the wind. And if we've got the sails loose, we won't even need to go all the way into the wind to stop the boat. But what's important is that you don't get off the boat, or your crew doesn't get off the boat until it has stopped. If they try to get on the boat when the boat's still moving, all catamarans are quite powerful, and if it's moving, it's going to be very difficult for the crew to hold the boat. And then very important is when we're holding the boat, we always want to be holding the boat at the front, because that is where the boat is going to pivot, and it means that the boat won't be able to sail off without you. So there we go. And if you've got a quick release on your main sheet as well, don't release the main sheet until the crew is holding the boat and the boat is stopped. There we go. Okay, so if we could have no further questions now. We've been going over 50 minutes. In fact, I think I'm just going to take a short commercial break. I think that was pretty short. All right, so I'm just going to go on to another one of our preloaded questions. I've got a couple of preloaded questions today. All right, and this one is from Jazz, who says, I'm just wondering if a person can use a kite surfing harness on a catamaran. And Jazz uses a seat harness for kite surfing. Yeah, there's no, if you're using a seat harness, and that the seat harness for windsurfing or kite surfing is effectively the same as a sailing harness, except it's less likely to have the back support. So here at Wildwind, all of the instructors used to use windsurfing seat harnesses for boat sailing because they were much more comfortable rather than wearing a whole trapeze harness. And because it was pretty rare that the instructors were actually trapezing like flat out. So what I mean by that is we're just sailing very short legs. So if this is the side of the boat, like that, and we're trapezing, that is a foot. So flat out would be like that. And if we're trapezing flat out, then you definitely need that back support, because otherwise you could either hurt your back or you'd have to work your core muscles too much. But if you're going to sail and instead of being flat out, you're going to be slightly more seated like this as you sail, then you're not really using the back support. So just using a seat harness is going to be fine. Do of course make sure that all of your straps and everything are in good condition. So like some of our guys used to just find really old windsurfing harnesses and the straps would break, and that of course has consequences. So the difference between the two, I actually have preloaded some spreader bars here. This is actually a spreader bar from a windsurfing harness, which would be very similar to a kite surfing harness, and it's fine to use this on a sailing boat, but you don't have I don't feel it stays connected quite as well as with a regular sailing spreader bar, which just has the one piece that comes in front. I know that most kite surfing harnesses these days will have a good quick release mechanism, but the quick release on your harness is something, these are readily available. You can get a spreader bar with a quick release, fit it to an older harness. This thing really could get you out of a sticky situation. So on this one, we just pull the pin, hook comes off, and pull the pin a bit more, hook comes off completely. And then that should free you off from most sticky situations. Another design is this one. This is an RWO trapeze hook, which has got more like a seatbelt style where you've got a button on the top. You press the button, then the hook releases. Of course, it's a good idea to check your quick release quite regularly. Make sure you keep it washed so it definitely works nicely. There we go. So yes, you can use a seat harness from windsurfing or kite surfing. I'd say as long as you've got a quick release and you're not wanting to use do the full extension on the trapeze too much. All right. So just scrolling back a little bit. Okay, just scrolling back a little bit. Okay. So yeah, I'm just going to have to keep it fairly brief now, as I have been going for quite a long time now. Not Ausgang says never found the world records of the cat classes. Any idea? No, this is why I started the speed stick competition, because no one else seemed to be doing anything similar. So this is for recording the top speeds of boats. The Windsurfing Speed Sailing Association has got it very nicely organized, but unfortunately there isn't anything for us cat sailors unless you actually go to a speed competition, which would be in a place for a week. Like I know there's some good ones in the UK, these speed weeks, but if it's not windy that week, you're not going to get much of a big speed. So the speed stick is all that we've got. All right, so Matthew says, for moving the block hanger, is it necessary to fill the holes where they were mounted before? Is the boom water sealed like the mast? Yeah, it's not so essential that the boom is sealed, but I think it's nice to keep it sealed. So what you could do is what I've started doing, as you may have got the impression, I'm a big fan of this epoxy paste these days. And I would actually fill the holes with quite a thick epoxy paste so that water can't get in. But the other thing you could do is, and what we've done in the past, is use some sealant for the old holes. Like the best one is Sikaflex in the old holes, and then take some tape and just go over the top with some tape or a sticker or something. That will do the job to seal it so that water can't get back in. Or you could put some more rivets in the holes that you've drilled the rivets out of and seal those bad boys up. That will work as well. All right, we got Scott on board. Scott is dropping it in the slot. Oh, Scott, there's going to be something you're going to like in the introduction of this weekend's Show Us Your Cat. Just in the first 5 seconds of Show Us Your Cat, you're going to like that, I think. And Scott's actually preloaded a request. Scott, who is a good 16 sailor, has said, is there anybody who sails in or around Dallas, Texas, who would fancy Scott coming out for a sail with them at the end of the month? So that is, if you're in or around Dallas, Texas, end of April, would anybody fancy more of the USA and trying out some different boats? So if you can accommodate Scott there, either put it in the live chat or put it in the comments later on. That would be great. Okay, I'm not going to read out everything now, only the ones which I feel are of particular note. All right, Willis, we're on the block hanger on the main sheet. Actually, if I leave that there, it does look from a certain angle quite rude. I'm going to take that down. We don't need that sort of as a family show. Yeah, Willis is saying with this block hanger, is it possible rather than to remount a hanger in between the two, can he use a piece of Dyneema or something with a loop in the middle, with a loop in the middle, where you can attach his blocks? Yes, you could do that, but it's not as satisfactory as to actually fit the hanger in the middle. So if it's going to be a long-term fix, which should be, then do one in the middle. That's what I would do. Okay. All right. I think he's getting some advice from Chris there. Okay. All right. So just a bit more on the preloaded. This one's from Finn Time Lapse in Australia, where it's about 3 in the morning or something. He says, why, when you go downwind, do you have the sail in all the way on a cat? Well, it's not actually necessarily true that you have the sail in all the way on the downwind leg. But, all right, if this is us going downwind, so true wind is coming from here, then we're creating our induced wind by going forwards, and then our apparent wind, which is the wind we're actually sailing the boat on, is coming from a combination of the two, which on the downwind leg, we'd want that coming from 90 degrees. This is our catamaran sailors' downwind sailing angle. All right, so the way we judge that we're on that angle is we'd have some sort of wind indicator at the front of the boat. It could just be a piece of cassette tape, or you might have some sort of wind vane kind of thing, or a burgee. But that would want to be just going, or those would want to be going straight across. So this is the first reason why we don't have the sail all the way out like you might do on a traditional monohull, because we're not actually ever going to sail, unless we've got some weird circumstances, we're not going to sail any further downwind than this angle. And then what we're looking for is to have a good flow over the sails. So with the sails, we'll just do the mainsail. The front part of the mainsail wants to be kind of pointing at the apparent wind. But then this is if we're sailing without a spinnaker. And then we're going to be sailing with the with the traveller most of the way out. And with the main sheet pretty loose, to be fair, if it's a lighter wind. So we are sailing with the sail quite a good amount out on the downwind in the light winds. But then as we start going faster, there's going to be more pressure, which is opening the sail up. This is because the sail is quite tall, which means compared to, let's say, compared to a laser where the sail is relatively short, because the sail is quite tall, the top part of the sail is going to be blown open more by the pressure, which means we do need to sheet in to keep that sail shape consistent. But also, as we go faster, the apparent wind is going to get stronger, which means we are going to want to sheet in more. Now, the big difference is if we're sailing downwind with a spinnaker, then we're not sailing with the apparent wind on this angle, because with the spinnaker, we are creating a massive amount of induced wind. So let's really bring that induced wind up like that. Very impressive amount of induced wind. So with the spinnaker up, and we are actually going to sail once it's windy with the traveller in the middle and with the main sheet absolutely cranked. So in fact, when it's windy with the spinnaker up, you might be sailing downwind with the main sheet in more than on the upwind. I know, right? Crazy. This is because, first reason is when the wind is coming off the spinnaker, it's going straight down the boat like this. The spinnaker is channeling the airflow around the back of the mainsail. So if we actually had the mainsail out at all, it would create drag and slow us down. The way that we handle the pressure when it's windy is by going as fast as we possibly can. Just not going to go on to too much about this. So if we sheet out, we're going to create drag, slowing the boat down, and it's not going to, the boat is going to load up with pressure. It's going to be an ugly occasion. We're not going to be having much fun there. So we're going to sail as fast as possible. The other reason why we're cranking the main in with the kite up is, where's the board over here, is there's the spinnaker, there's the mainsail, is the top part of the mast is unsupported. So we're actually pulling down through the back of the mainsail, which is supporting the top part of the mast, acting like a backstay on a yacht, so that the spinnaker, the pressure in the spinnaker isn't going to snap the mast. Right, I'm going to stop that one there because I'm going to have to tie this up fairly shortly. So Stephen says on the downwind, tails at 90 degrees or slightly pointing back. No, 90 degrees is definitely the sweet spot. If they're pointing slightly back, you're not going as far downwind as you could be. Granted, you will be going a bit faster, but you won't be getting to where it is that you want to be going. Most important thing whenever you go sailing is, where are we going? Because if you don't know where you're going, then what's the point of any of it? So where are you going? Most important thing on any level. There we go. All right. Willis says, thanks, Matt and Chris. Of course, Joe, good luck, Scott. Joe, please do a quick vid on gear. I have some paranoia about the great whites around here, and I intend to anchor and dive. I want advanced. Okay, walkie-talkies, etc., whatever you recommend. In construction safety, 5th with diving first. All right. Yeah, I don't know if you saw the videos I did earlier on this year. I did 2 on safety, 1 on safety considerations, and the second one was on what gear to take with you. Maybe that is going to help. All right, we got Dave on board. Hello, Dave, and Team Impulse, Langebaan, South Africa. Are you, surely you're not, no, you can't back in Langebaan already. Great to have you with us, Dave. Missing those biltong steaks big time, but the burger, there is a burger in Vasiliki which is good, but nothing like the biltong steak. But it is good, but nothing like the biltong steak. Okay, so I think, yes, that is all we've got time for today. Thanks to everybody who's been with us live. Thanks to everybody who's watching this later. And yeah, if you do have any questions, put them in the comments. Other than that, we've got Show Us Your Cat on Sunday, if I actually finish making it, because the difficulty at the moment, you may have noticed there's not much coming out on Joyrider TV. It's because I'm full-time working, doing real work stuff, trying to get this place ready here in Greece. So I don't have quite so much time for making the videos, but I will try to have Show Us Your Cat out on time, because if Show Us Your Cat isn't on time, then you're not going to know what day of the week it is. So there we are. All right. So yeah, I'll see you soon with some more on Joyrider TV. Thanks for coming, and good luck. Have a great weekend. And like Willis says, click the thumbs up button. Oh, and hello to Ryan in Maui. Great to have you. Maui, Ryan, you've come at the end. But thanks for coming anyway. Cheers.